This is our presentation on chemical engineering in medicine with a focus on the pharmaceutical industry. Obviously, there are many different employment opportunities for chemical engineers, but a lot of them include two types of work that they can go into through each niche, and that is research and development, which may include work in a laboratory, and industry work, which can involve manufacturing.
Research and development. Chemical engineers in research and development are responsible for researching, developing, and applying chemical processes to create a big range of items for commercial and industrial uses. Across the pharmaceutical industry, chemical engineers are employed in R&D to full-scale manufacturing in technical and management capacities. Most jobs in this field focus on researching and developing chemicals which are used to make and improve pretty much everything we see around us. They also develop methods to produce and test these chemicals, and then they determine the quality of those methods and their results. In the pharmaceutical industry, chemical engineers design and troubleshoot processes for the production of drugs, also known as active pharmaceutical ingredients, APIs for short. These are molecules that cannot be found naturally occurring, so they can only be made by chemical reactions. Some examples of these APIs are ibuprofen, which is found in AbbVie pills, acetaminophen, which is found in Tylenol, naxopren, found in Aleve, loratadine, found in Clarithin, and alprazolam, that is found in Xanax. Hence, they can create new drugs like medicines, pills, vaccines, and they can also create synthetic versions of already known medicines. Chemical engineers need to take into consideration the effect that these drugs have in the human body, since each individual body responds in a particular way depending on the drug that is being taken. They're also very careful about the API's concentration within a body, because it needs to be high enough to be effective, but not too high that it becomes dangerous to the person taking the drug. On a larger scale, these chemical reactions have to be robust, reliable, and affordable. There are two known reactions that make up over half of all the ones used in synthesis to discover and develop drugs. We have the amide formation, which is created by the condensation of a carboxylic acid and amine. Due to its almost unlimited set of available carboxylic acid and amine derivative, the amide coupling strategies can be an efficient approach for medicinal chemists to generate novel compounds. We also have the Suzuki-Miyara cross coupling, which is an organic reaction, where the coupling partners are boronic acid and organohalate. This reaction is scalable and cost-effective for use in the synthesis of four intermediates for pharmaceuticals or fine chemicals. The main reason why these two have contributed that much to medical chemistry is because they're the most robust reaction. As I said before, they need to be robust, reliable, and affordable. Chemical engineers also use what's known as building blocks, which is used in drug discovery, drug design, and virtual screening. It defines imaginable virtual molecular fragments and chemical reagents from which drugs might be constructed or synthetically prepared. Some other R&D tasks that chemical engineers do are overseeing the production environment as well as tracking the temperature, flow rate, and electricity usage. Propose, design, and oversee solutions for chemical issues whenever there is any issue. Optimizing day-to-day processes while considering environmental issues as well as supply stocking. And also they maintain engineer documentation, emphasizing engineering codes and also engineering standards.
Pharmaceutical manufacturing. Right. Often in pharmaceutical industry, as chemical engineers, we're dealing with continuous processes that are often dependent on material flows. This plays a direct role for chemical engineering, as we can use our learned material and energy balances along with fundamental thermodynamic principles that we can use to solve problems that help with the design and make maintenance of these processes and procedures, and also help us develop new processes in the pharmaceutical industry. Mixes active and non-active ingredients to obtain final dosages. And also as chemical engineers, we're dealing often with scale-up considerations. So we're taking small laboratory processes and we're making them bigger and creating a final product that we can do large scale. Some considerations are going to be cooling of the product, and often we're using heat exchangers and cooling jackets to cool down exothermic reactions that occur when we're creating these new drugs. And this is in order to keep processes safe and recycle used materials. So if we have a hot fluid coming out, we need to cool it down so we can reuse it and make sure the processes maintain operating temperatures. The stoichiometry and intermolecular forces between the compounds that we're using are also a consideration that we have to take into account, and solvent extractions. So when we finish the processes and we react to our chemicals, often we need to separate our products to get our desired product that we need, and we need to purify it. So we're often using techniques that we learned in, say, separations, liquid-liquid extraction, distillation, and we use that to purify the products that we want to use or that we want as our final product. Unit operations and processing techniques. Powder feeding and powder blending, those are, they're feeding different powdered blends in order to achieve correct dosages and ensure ingredients are properly mixed. So we're going to use those we're going to grind it down and so we're able to mix those drugs with other ingredients in order to create our drugs that we want to manufacture. Milling is another form of that. It uses mechanical energy or mechanical mixing procedure to physically break down coarse particles into finer ones that can be carried on to further processing. Granulation is used to enlarge particle into granules, and that often occurs after the pharmaceutical ingredients have already been added, and we do that to increase uniformity and distribution of each ingredient in our product. Hot melt extrusion is also another process that we use, and a different technique that we can use to process our materials. And pharmaceutical packaging. So there's a lot of considerations to take into account when we're packaging our drugs. Pharmaceutical packaging is highly regulated, but it's also dependent on each country's standards and regulations. Considerations include uniformity of the drug through different production lots, how to keep products shelf stable by analyzing the packaging and chosen materials' ability to not break down over time, keep products safe for longer. Packaging considerations are also important when considering dosages and dispensing of products that are often sealed and presented in such a way as to avoid any ambiguity in what the correct dosage should be. Design of package labels, that's important to ensure that we have all presented information, what type of drug we're using, the correct dosages, directions, any sort of cautions or hazards associated with that label. Blister packs is what you're going to see on the bottom left screen. And then bottles are what you're going to see on the bottom right screen. It's just different forms of packaging based on what the product is and how they want to present it to the consumers. Shelf stability, we kind of talked about that, is really important. We want a product that's going to last on the shelf and not break down over time. Uniformity, a product should be the same, especially in pharmaceuticals. For each individual dosage should be exactly the same no matter what. And then temperature control, and not only temperature control, but limiting the pill or the drug's exposure to oxygen and moisture can be very important, as it can greatly affect the efficiency of the product. And then packaging metrics in production. Packaging is often a continuous process. So we can use a lot of our engineering principles to optimize that. Some tools in manufacturing. These are also, a lot of these are also continuous processes. Capsule filling machines are, what they're used to put the powder in the molds in order to create each individual pill. X-ray inspection systems, they are important to scan for physical contaminants, and they're also, they have different types of X-ray machines based on the type of packaging, like the glass vials you see in the top screen will have a certain type of X-ray machine, or the blister packs will have a certain type of X-ray machine used to scan. Tablet punches, those are just basically used to create the different tablets and compress the powdered ingredients into a form that can be taken orally. And spray drying accessories, same deal. And automation is, like I said, they're often continuous processes that need to be managed using our engineering principles. Also, there's some safety considerations just as far as plant safety, especially with pharmaceuticals. We're often using reactive chemicals. So hot, liquid, steam, exothermic reactions are very important. Often the chemicals that are being used in the manufacturing process can be lethal in high dosages. So chemical exposure hazards are something that you really have to take into consideration. As far as worker and health safety, we're using a lot of mechanical instruments and tools. So moving parts hazards is something that's really important to watch out for. And fires, explosions, runaway chemical reactions. Again, runaway chemical reactions are very bad and they're important to avoid, and usually caused by exothermic reactions that are not properly cooled, or there may be some failures with the cooling process. So that's something that's taken into consideration.
So how is this relevant today in 2021? Chemical engineers contribute their knowledge as well as their innovative thinking to the pharmaceutical industry. Being innovative and forward-thinking allows for efficiency and effectiveness of medicine production to have an upward trend. As we discussed today, we talked about how our knowledge contributes to actually creating the medicines, like we discussed the Zantac and Tylenol, but we also discussed our knowledge of material balances and separations going into the actual creation of pills and putting them into bottles. Additionally, as previously mentioned, the manufacturing must be very precise for the pharmaceutical drugs being produced to not only be effective, but also be safe, because obviously consumers cannot have high doses of certain things and be okay. So, especially during this pandemic, chemical engineers are in high demand for assisting in the enhancement of pharmaceuticals as well as their production. So we see companies like Johnson & Johnson and Pfizer employing chemical engineers in the development of their vaccine, allowing our field to give back to the community in such a high scale manner. So we're very thankful for companies like those to allow us to contribute to something so much bigger than ourselves. Because even without the vaccine, we're contributing in the creation of these pills that are allowing us to kind of combat the pandemic with immunity, support, and everything. So we're very thankful for that. And we would like to thank you guys so much for your time.